Today's episode is sponsored by Quaker Houghton, the global leader in industrial process fluids. Visit them at home.quakerhoughton.com.
Aerospace and defense manufacturing.
Machines and automation.
Additive manufacturing.
Smart manufacturing.
The global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm your host, Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief for SME Media. I'm joined today by Nazi Hamidi, who leads global strategy for Quaker Houghton Fluid Intelligence, which specializes in industrial process fluids. The company operates in 25 countries with a customer list that includes top steel, aluminum, automotive, aerospace, offshore, can, mining, and metalworking companies. Nazi works across the company's R&D, engineering, technology, and sales teams to commercialize products and launch new and upgraded offerings. A chemical engineer and MBA by trade, she has about 30 years of experience with industrial customers of the specialty chemicals and material sectors. Nazi, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and QH?
Yeah, so, I'm a chemical engineer, and I work with Quaker Houghton, who's full of chemists and chemical engineers and some really great people who work closely with our customers, ranging anywhere from the metalworking industry to die casting to automotive to steel and non-ferrous like aluminum. So just some really smart people, and our goal primarily is to help people use process fluids in their manufacturing to make sure that their manufacturing gives them the kind of results that they want. Defect-free products, production processes that have great throughput, that are very efficient, and that's mostly what our products do.
So there's been a lot of advances on the materials front over the years, higher temperature, higher strength. What are some, as well as on technology overall, what are some of the challenges that you see?
So it's interesting. We deal with manufacturers of all sizes and varying levels of complexity. From a very large global steel manufacturing business to small, mom and pop shops that have CNC machines, and the degree of automation tends to vary, but even among really large global companies, sometimes the degree of automation you would expect just isn't there. So we're able to, because we're in and out of so many different types of manufacturing segments, and we see many things and have seen our process fluids used in different types of automation settings. We're able to advise our customers on, hey, there's a better way to do that, or have you thought about, instead of manually sampling, using a sensor for that? And so that's a lot of what we're trying to do with our Fluid Intelligence platform, is to help the customer when they're ready, when they're interested in taking that next step toward automation, to try to remove some of those lower value tasks and automate them so that they can free up time to work on, parts of their manufacturing process that they care a lot more about. So that's what we're trying to spend some time on, is teach people, how to, in a very simple way, automate some things that they haven't gotten around to automating.
You mentioned the sensor opportunity. How else can companies use automation on the fluid and material side?
So it's interesting. Process fluids, as key as they are to manufacturing, they tend to be thought of as an ancillary process. So, for example, our process fluids do anything from, keeping a process at a certain temperature, to removing friction, to providing the right amount of lubricity. And all of that plays into, the keeping the manufacturing process efficient, delivering a a product that's defect-free, making sure the tooling in the manufacturing process doesn't break, but it's not thought of as the key central primary manufacturing process. It's just a, ancillary process that keeps the manufacturing working properly. So we're often, the last or kind of a secondary or even tertiary thought of, oh, gee, maybe we should take a look at what's happening with the process fluid and see if that's, that can make things better, right? And we're trying to work with our customers to make sure that they understand, hey, if you take care of the process fluid and you make sure things are running properly there, you're going to have a better outcome downstream with your tooling, with your parts, with your production efficiency. So do some simple things like automate the sampling and measurement of the process fluid, or automate, integrate that with a automated fluid replenishment system. Sometimes we call it top up. And rather than having literally, a person manually dump a tote into the central system. There's many things that we could do to help a customer automate. And that way they don't have to worry so much about these ancillary systems. They can just focus on the parts they're trying to make.
So a couple of things come to mind. One is what kind of response that you've gotten from customers as you bring this up. And the other is, Industry 4.0 is a big buzz term these days. Companies are on various paths and stages and how far along they are on this. Is the automation in this part of the greater Industry 4.0? And how so? How are you using that sensor to help operators in real time?
Yeah, well, first, I'd say the response has been good. Our customers are interested and sometimes, respond with, oh, you mean you can really do that? We can, instead of having, somebody go grab a sample and send it back to you in your laboratory to do, time-consuming titration analysis so you can tell us what the concentration is. You mean we could do this with automation? Some people are surprised, others are not. It really depends on, what degree of automation they've already embraced. But like I said, I think generally customers have tried to automate the primary manufacturing process to some extent, not the ancillary processes. So I think those Industry 4.0 circles of interest, if you will, are expanding out further to, what are some easy things that we can bring automation to that would really drive value. And whenever we have the conversation with customers around, the concept of freeing up time of your staff so they can go work on higher value manufacturing problems, that's always of interest, and even some of our more sophisticated, say, steel industry customers that already have, a high degree of automation in their process, they're really interested in this. We can bring our fluid control technology to them, and that's our brand is, QH Fluid Control. And they'll get data that they never had before, down to the minute what the concentration and pH was. And they'll use that to correlate to some of their models that predict what roll forces are and line speeds are. And as you can imagine, those are, if you can control those kinds of things and predict where key variables like that will be, you will get a better outcome in your production process, right? Make it more efficient and make the products that you're producing have less defects. All of this has an impact on less downtime. There's some real benefits.
So you mentioned the FI platform. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that is, especially as it pertains to sensors?
Yeah, sure. We have been working on this platform in various parts and pieces for at least 5 years. And what we've done is really just started to focus in on what the offering is and bring some things that we already had experience with to the table as our first generation of products. So basically our platform is, 3 parts. We've got, or 4 parts really, the fluids and the expertise that we have in various applications of the fluids. We wrapped it with hardware and software. And the hardware, we have 2 brands of QH Fluid Monitor, which is basically a device that does measurement only, so automated measurement of the fluid and certain parameters. And then the second part of the hardware portfolio is QH Fluid Control, and that's an integrated measure and control device where it's a whole system that not only has a sensor built in to do some sort of measurement of key fluid parameters, but also the automated control response based on that measurement. So we've been having success with this across many different industries. And then, another key piece of the platform is we take the data that's generated from these devices and we make it available to the customers in our Fluid Trend platform. And that's where they can see all the measurement and control data. And even get alarms, say to a phone, to a laptop, in some cases maybe to a machine through a green or a red light. It depends on the application, but get an alarm that says, hey, you're out of control. You've exceeded your upper control limit or your lower control limit, and you need to do something. Or if it's a fluid control device, the device will automatically make the right adjustment. But having that data available to our customers, we've seen it to be, in some cases, game-changing, where, the process engineers who are always trying to figure out how to improve, throughput, improve product quality, and overall just reduce, the total operating cost of the line, they're using that data to run models and correlations and turn it into predictive data that they take into account for their process. So it's been, it's been case by case where we're working with customers on that, but we're finding that there are some customers who are a little more sophisticated and really interested in the data, and then other customers really just like the convenience factor of having, some portion of managing the fluid automated.
I want to talk a little bit more about some of the game-changing benefits, but first of all, at what point are you taking the fluid measurements, and how is that different than how things were done in the past?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So there's say some of our smaller customers, metalworking, maybe even sometimes in die casting, or surprisingly in automotive, they will send somebody around. Sometimes they call these people oilers, or they might have just a maintenance, title. And they'll send people around machine to machine to take a grab sample from the sump that holds the process fluid. And that sample has to be packaged up. And if the customer doesn't have their own in-house laboratory, they send it back to Quaker Houghton, and we do a fluid analysis, and we look for, concentration, pH, some other things. But it's a time-consuming analysis and involves, complicated titrations. And as you can imagine, just the shipping time, it is a few days or a week, depending on where it's going. And by the time we get the analysis done and back to them, these systems that they're sampling are actually dynamic. Things are changing. The fluid is evaporating. The fluid's getting consumed. The fluid might have other bacteria introduced to it, bacteria growing in it, because some of these fluids are water-based, right? Or contamination introduced if, say, it's a grinding process and there could be abrasives. The metal abrasives, get introduced into the fluids. So things change, and that result that we're giving back to them could no longer be valid, but the customer will maybe adjust the concentration based on the result that we provided, even though it's no longer valid. So now what we're doing is installing a sensor, machine specific, so that the customer no longer has to send that person around to go grab samples machine by machine, and they decrease that turnaround time, and they can react instantaneously, almost instantaneously, but certainly not, within days or weeks' time. And so they're really reacting to what's more representative in the system rather than to something that could be 3 days old, 7 days old. So you not only are you're eliminating the manual labor of sample collection and packaging and shipping, you're decreasing significantly that turnaround time, and then the response to the measurement is going to be more in line with what's actually happening in the system. So we've seen customers say, "Oh, you mean I can actually just get rid of this?" And they sometimes they have handheld devices that they carry around and try and measure on each sump, and these things get clouded and fouled over time. Not to mention there's all kinds of cross-contamination that's introduced, and depending on who you have read the little device, you get different error introduced depending on, one user to the next user. And what we do is we put our sensor and make it machine specific, and we eliminate all that. So we've seen even the less sophisticated customers get really excited over just the idea that we make their life simpler, and they can do adjustments faster, and they get back time to go run to ground, other maintenance issues that are higher priority.
Sure. So saves time, better information, and more convenient.
Yes, absolutely.
So back to the kind of the game-changing questions, and not to put you on the spot or necessarily name names, but any examples that come to mind, either on some of the low-hanging fruit that companies are able to realize quickly, or those bigger picture items that are making a huge difference?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few things that come to mind. We worked with one, I'll leave the name out, but a big automotive, global company, and they had 17 different grinding machines that they were applying our fluid intelligence technology to, and all these machines were tied to a central filtration system. But you can imagine the complexity of trying to get samples from 17 different points plus the central system. And we hooked them up with our integrated measure and control technology, our fluid control XMS, to monitor our coolant. And basically over time, we helped them save about $300,000 annually. And some of that had to do with decreasing their downtime. They were taking significant downtime to just adjust for the manual top up of these systems, and sometimes we were things didn't go properly with their manual adjustment. They'd end up taking downtime, which leads to lost production time, and higher scrap. We looked at their overall process and figured out we saved them about 1,000 man hours annually. So just, by having that data and having some degree of automation, it was a huge savings for them. We've had other customers, another customer who, the alarm system and the messaging that can be sent, tells you if you're, above control limits or over, under control limits. And we had one customer receive alerts early in the morning that they were over consuming on process fluid, highly over consuming. And it led them to quickly dispatch somebody instead of waiting until later in the day, that a full shift was going to be there, and they figured out they had a leakage. And so just by having this alert, right, that led them to identify that there was a leak in the system, and they were basically, throwing away valuable process fluid down the drain. So they were able to stop that. So there's all kinds of benefits, some of them not super complicated, but some of them very mundane, like we helped you, avoid having potentially a catastrophic leak and also throwing, process fluid down the drain. Just simple things like that. But yeah, our customers have reacted really well to it. And then in some cases, we might go into one plant and help them, with some degree of automation, maybe on, the measure only side. And when they see how it works, they say, hey, can we integrate that? Can we also do this on the fluid replenishment? Do you have a top-up unit? Can the whole thing be integrated? Then when it works out well with that plant, they tell their sister plant down the road. And that's basically how we've been working across our customer base.
So you mentioned the $300,000 savings, which is very impressive, and I'm sure nobody would turn that down. But what about some of the smaller manufacturers who maybe have the wherewithal to implement a lot of these Industry 4.0 technologies? How do they get started, and what kind of benefits can they derive?
Yeah, with those customers, if we see that if they don't have a high degree of automation, they're not already, in tune to this, we start small, and we just, we're not in the business of selling equipment. We make and produce and help people use process fluids. This fluid intelligence offering is just complementary to that. So we really try and focus on what's the problem that you have. And a lot of the smaller customers will say, I just can't make enough. Or I don't have, my staff is small. I can't possibly get to everything. So we really try to understand what the problem is. And if there's a way that even just automating the measurement would help with that problem, we'll say, have you thought about this, right? Instead of, having that one person run around to the entire manufacturing plant, check 25 different machines, we can give you, X amount of these devices and make them machine specific. You don't ever have to actually do the integrated control if you're not comfortable with that. But let's start small, right? And let's just get you back some of your man hours that are otherwise spent on low value tasks like grabbing samples and packaging them up. And let's start there. So that's usually what we do. And in our fluid intelligence portfolio, we do have some products that are, I'd say, at the lower end of complexity that fit nicely with that. Give people the convenience of just maybe walking by a whole row of machines and looking down the manufacturing corridor and looking for, are the lights green or are they red? Okay, if there's one that's red, I should go over there and check out what's going on. I should pull up the data and figure out where the anomaly is, or look for an alert. Did an alert come to my phone? So that's usually where we're starting small with customers. And you'd be surprised, even some, bigger company names that's where we're starting, starting small with them.
So what does it take to actually get started and equip some of the machines and processes with the sensors? And is there any training that's involved to help the operators understand the data?
Yeah, it's as far as training, it's not real complicated. It's not like our customers have to sit through a day-long class or even a PowerPoint modules. I mean, we literally send a manual, where all the installation and operating maintenance instructions are included, but we'll walk people through that. Typically for some of our bigger installations, we'll have somebody there. We don't pull conduit and set up the electrical. The customer takes care of all of that, of course. We're not electrical contractors, but once they have that set up, we'll go on site to, plug the unit in, calibrate it, and set it up so it can get turned on and commissioned. And most of everything we have is really plug and play. We do take great care to, in advance, make sure that the customer's fluid is calibrated to our sensors, and that's really important. It's not like, I'm sure you're aware, and anybody listening to this is aware, it's not like we develop these sensor technologies just overnight, and, other people have sensor technologies too. But one of the things that we've found is it's really complicated and very important to keep that sensor and the fluid calibrated. And when you don't keep them calibrated, that's where where reliability issues come into play and things can go wrong and give false readings. And we've developed an expertise over time and a database of, how to properly calibrate our sensors to our fluids, that we can get people up and running, off on the right track, and with a high degree of confidence, that everything's going to work reliably. So it's usually just, depending on the complexity of the hardware they've chosen, it's usually we deploy somebody to make sure they're locating it in the right place. They understand the requirements for, electric, water, and so on. And then particularly if it's a more complex measure and control integrated device like our fluid control hardware, we'll dispatch somebody to make sure that we are helping and turning it on, getting it up and running and commissioned.
So you mentioned that they're plug and play, and I imagine that you're continually improving it. What are some of the things that we can look forward in the next generation of the FI platform?
Yeah, we have quite a few really smart R&D scientists and chemists, physicists, as well as engineers, working together on a number of things. Those include new sensors. Some of them are, I'll leave it at this, optical based, and have been in the past very difficult to prove in some of these applications. And what we're doing different now around some of these optical technologies is we're engineering them ourselves. We're taking the best of some of these optical technologies and figuring out how to make them work with processed fluids that are not as simple as water, right? They're emulsion based, they're milky, they're hard to see through, and we figure out how to make that work. And so we're looking at multiple different optical technologies and trying to bring those to market. And then the other thing that's really interesting that we're doing is on the data side. So we have a very simple, easy to use dashboard that will show customers kind of where the different measurements are with their fluid and, how things are trending, down to the minute and 5 years worth of data and so on. But we're looking at algorithms that we can put on top of that to do some automated data analysis and kick out some recommendations. So, for example, one common scenario could be if our customers have been using some of our fluid control technology for a while and they just consistently run, nicely between a certain upper and lower control limit, but they get good results across their, production process in terms of, product quality, production efficiency. We say, you know what, maybe it's time based on this data that we adjust the concentration down a little bit. So we're actually going to save you on fluid, the consumption of fluid, but let's do some sensitivity analysis on how low we can go without adversely affecting your other manufacturing metrics. And so we've got, we will put together an algorithm, and that is something that we can do, case by case, put together an algorithm that factors in the process metrics they're trying to meet, plus all the process fluid data that we have, and do some prediction and then say, okay, let's try this for the next 30 days and see what happens, right? And we're always trying to help the customer optimize their process and their overall total cost.
And how much of this, or to what extent, are you using AI in these algorithms and the predictive aspect of it?
Well, that would be a whole nother podcast with one of our physicists. But I can tell you for sure there's, when you use these optical technologies, you're talking about light spectrum, right? And just passing the fluid through the light spectrum generates a boatload of data that's difficult in any spreadsheet to do, to manage. And so we are using machine learning, AI and machine learning to help us with converting all of that data into useful calculations. And it's pretty complex. And I am super impressed with some of my colleagues who have single-handedly figured this out or taught themselves. And learned from other industries, other applications. So it's very cool. And our next step is to, how do we take AI and machine learning and apply it to the optimization of the data. Right now, we're using AI and ML to convert some of the sensor, data and calculations into consumable data for the customer. So, yep, it's definitely being used, and it definitely makes things that are otherwise, unimaginably complicated, manageable.
Yeah, it's certainly a brave new world out there, and I look forward to learning more about your next breakthroughs and advances. Nazi, thanks again for joining us today. And dare I say, it's been a fluid conversation.
I love it.
Definitely very informative. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us. If listeners want to learn more about Quaker Houghton, where should they go?
QuakerHoughton.com, and front and center on our webpage, we have a part about fluid intelligence. You can click there. You can download a brochure. You can drop a message into contact us on our website, or my email is nozi.hamidi, HAMIDI, @QuakerHoughton.com. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and hear more podcasts, visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org.